FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
The Bay Area Discovery Museum, we're all about play, and we're all about creativity. In fact, creativity is a thing that really unites us and motivates us. And I was thinking on the way over here, as parents and teachers, we always think about preparing our kids for the future. And today, as we move through the 21st century, the future is not what it used to be. And why do I say that? Think about it for a second. It's been estimated that in the next 10 years, we are going to experience the equivalent of 100 years of technological and scientific breakthroughs. And in the next 10 years, another 100 at least. So the year 2030 is simply unknowable. There's no textbook or standardized test that's going to prepare our kids for success in the year 2030. It's just not going to happen. So what do we need to do? We need to prepare them not only to be analytic thinkers, to be good in reading and writing and mathematics. We also have to develop their creative sides. They're going to need to be able to see which way the wind is blowing, to kind of check trends in a world where entire industries go away almost overnight. Think about the film industry and Kodak and Polaroid. But entire new industries pop up almost overnight. Think computer animation and Pixar. So in that world, if we're really going to prepare our kids for success, creativity is going to be important. And it's going to be important for us as a Bay Area because if we want to remain on the cutting edge of innovation and technology, we've got to prepare the next generation and 2 generations of technological thinkers and innovators. It's just very important. So if we have young kids, what does that mean? It means it doesn't matter if they're not just for artists. It's if they're going to be creative scientists, creative educators, creative doctors and lawyers. What does it mean for them? The answer is really deceptively simple. Young kids develop their creativity through play. But it's got to be the right kind of play. It's got to be open-ended. It's got to be child-directed and unstructured play. It's exactly the kind of play that happens at the Bay Area Discovery Museum every day, 250,000 times a year. The research proves it, and our experience at the museum, and I suspect the experience of all the educators in the room today confirms it. Creative play is absolutely essential for the future of our kids and for the future of our society. It's why we love it when we're described at the museum as the Bay Area's incubator for creativity and innovation. Which brings us to today's speakers. So, the last couple of years we've had great authors who've written about creativity. This year we thought we'd go with sort of the purest form of creativity. Steve Wozniak, obviously. In 1976, Steve founded Apple Computer with another guy, and the following year he introduced the Apple II computer, which was integral in launching the entire PC industry. For his achievements at Apple, Steve was awarded the National Medal of Technology by President Reagan, the highest honor bestowed on America's leading innovators. He's been involved in education and hands-on learning, was a founding sponsor of the Tech Museum, the Silicon Valley Ballet, and the Children's Discovery Museum in San Jose, which is located on Woz Way. And in 2000, he was inducted into the Inventors Hall of Fame, along with people like Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, Luther Burbank, and Orville and Wilbur Wright. Not a bad bunch of colleagues. So along with Steve, we're blessed to have a second speaker. Dana King is an award-winning news reporter and anchor with CBS Eyewitness News. She received 5 Emmy Awards, and in the year 2009, she received the Edward R. Murrow Award for reporting from Ghana. She's been all over the world reporting. She's worked as an anchor on Good Morning America and the CBS Morning News. She was a reporter on the CBS News with Dan Rather. You should also know she's a competitive rower and a painter, and in fact is in the process of phasing out of journalism for a full-time life as an artist. And she has two members of her family are in college at the same time, her daughter and Dana, who's gone back for an advanced degree in the arts. So what a great pair to talk about creativity today. Please help me bring them on stage.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I'm going to sit in that one.
Yes.
Thank you. They get a good
Your
view
choice.
of you there. Thank you
I want to see
very
your
much.
Emmys. Where do you keep them?
Actually, one is a doorstop.
Yes.
So, you know.
My attitude about awards is I don't know where I put them. I don't have to wear them at events because having an award, showing it off isn't the big thing. It's what you did to get it.
Exactly.
That's what matters.
I'm so excited to meet you, and I brought up all my stuff here. You just plop in the seat. What is that? I mean, I'm sitting next to Steve Wozniak. You know, I had our first Apple was the kind that was like a little box like this, and that's when my learning stopped. Because now I have this Crackberry, I'm trying to set a timer on it, and I can't even do it, and I'm sitting next to Steve Wozniak. I might need a little help with that, okay?
You know, I actually, believe it or not, technology, yes, we have a drive to develop these better and better things that will help us in our lives. But you have to say, how do you measure a life? You measure it by happiness. How much do you smile? How much do you frown? And are we happier than we were before we had all these computers and digital devices? When I look back to when I was a kid, boy, we were happy. We had everything we needed. Only one person in the family had to work. I mean, it was a nice time. So technology doesn't necessarily get us to that final heavenly point, but the important thing that matters is just helping another person. Helping people.
So
Stooping down, helping tie a child's shoelace. They know another human being's helping me. Those are the really important things.
Well, what I want to know, because we're not here to figure out the next great stock option and what to buy, we want to talk about creativity. Who was your role model when you were growing up?
Wow.
I want you to think back
Role
to
models,
when you were
yeah.
small.
Yes, when I was small, well, my father's obviously kind of a role model. That's sort of normal, It's like he was an engineer, took me to his work, and when I saw him hooking some parts together and getting some pictures on a little tiny screen and taking photographs of it for his boss, wow, I thought, this is a really big-time thing to do. I started thinking maybe I'd want to do that. But it was really more from books and TV shows and movies you see. And I'd get on the swing set and play with a friend, and we'd pretend we were in our submarines under the ocean going to solve a problem, or in a spaceship. And, just start. You get an early idea so young in your life. And I'll bet a lot of people in this room can trace that back. A very early instigation. This is something that's intriguing to me. This is something I might like to be. And then you encounter it in books. I'd hear stories, and the heroes would be somebody who knew how to build technology, build devices that could, enfold an alien and communicate with them. And I thought, wow, to be an engineer, to own your own company, to go into the laboratory and actually build the solutions to the world. So I started, thinking, wow, I want to be one of those people. I want to be an engineer like my dad. But I had a second goal, be a fifth grade teacher.
Grade teacher.
And I did it. I went and taught fifth grade for 8 years eventually. Kept it a secret because Apple was kind of well known by then.
Steve is very involved with youth education. But
the important thing is you have to know who you are really strong. I'm really strong at knowing what my values are in life, and
But as a little boy, you didn't know that. I want to take you back to 1955, when you were 5, and the things that were going on. And the reason I go to 5. Think. I'm going to give you a second to think about it. But
sort of childhood amnesia.
5 is like the sweet spot for the Bay Area Discovery Museum. Kids come, and granted, 0 to 8, 10, 12 years old, but 5 is the age where they're just so eager to do everything. And back then, what was on TV? Lassie, Rin Tin Tin, the $64,000 question. Technologically, the transistor radio was just introduced back then. Velcro was just introduced. Legos were just introduced.
You read something. These are the important things to me.
Taking you back, yes. Really?
Oh my God, that transistor radio, I could
important.
sleep all night long, every night, for months with the music playing all night in my bed. Unbelievable. That was the best gadget of my life. Fits in your hand. That's what I try to, everything I'd ever want in life is still that transistor radio. Yeah.
What were you
make it
like
better.
at 5? Were you bouncing off the walls? Were you a
At 5,
quiet
I was
child?
not electronic in any way yet. I was still too young. I don't remember. Pretty much you lose 2 things between the ages of 6 and 10. Your autobiographical childhood memories. Everybody still has some little memories of real deep times, but they could be reconstructed memories. You lose those, and between 6 and 10, you also lose your teeth.
Your teeth.
So that's where they're stored.
Yeah, but your folks still have your teeth on betting. So your childhood memories, they begin once you started school?
Oh my gosh, the first childhood memory I have is just being lost in some grocery store and where's my mom? And not too many that young. I mean, I know from 3rd grade on, I guess that's like closer to age 10. Sure, I remember being recognized as the smartest one at flashcards in my class. And the teacher said, it's the first time ever a boy was smarter than the girls, faster than the girls.
What?
So I thanked my mother for practicing with me the night before. And then I started thinking of myself. You start to, what are you going to become in life? You start thinking when you get praised by a teacher or a relative or a family member or a friend for something, you think, that's one of the things I'm good at. And of course, you work harder in that area, perhaps. Positive feedback you get, and then you're better yet for the rest of your life at something.
So it was okay with you to be the smartest kid?
I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about it, and my parents tell me now they measured my IQ at 200 plus when I was in 4th grade. Well, I don't know these things, they never told me. I just acted like normal one of the kids playing baseball and whatever. Eventually became shy, and I was so good at electronics, you get the reputation of being a nerd. So I was out of things socially. Normal people wouldn't talk to me. I would be in my little groups of people that could talk weird electronics talk, little projects we could build, and I was that kind of guy.
Did you have friends? I mean, were your friends like you? Did you guys...
Yes.
Sound bad?
Yes, we're a little older than 5, but I can go back a ways. And yes, when I was, let's say 7, all the friends in the neighborhood, we had a lot of kids in our neighborhood. I was a little on the older edge, but it was, riding our bikes around and making up. What do we do today? We had a lot of freedom in those days.
So you were a free-ranging child.
Yeah.
You didn't have
very much
play dates and
this was
go to
this was in
camp.
Sunnyvale. Well, once in a while, my mom would put me into something. I don't know if she ever put me in ballet, but I was probably in some dance, like little kids do. So
And look what happened.
And you know what? I was always scared of any kind of performance or being in front of people or speaking. I could never ever do that. So that had to, over a long time, it really changed a lot. I was extremely shy through school, afraid to be around people socially in any situation.
Did that then help you to, when you were alone, to be creative? Did you have like imaginary friends or?
When I was very young, maybe not as young as 5, but down in that range, yes, my friends and I in the neighborhood, we would talk about what could be built, and it was inspired by science fiction stories and TV shows and what we could possibly build. And we'd get magazines. We'd sometimes take our bikes down to Sunnyvale Electronics and buy a few parts and make things with switches and lights. Throw it and have this happen, do this and something else happens. Make our house-to-house intercoms where we could buzz each other on wires down the fence. I mean, we were just trying to figure out ways to do these things. We'd read a little. We'd have a little bit of knowledge, come across some parts and resources and an idea of how to do it for almost no money. Because we were kids and our parents didn't do it with us. If the parents just came and gave us all the money or supported us, I mean, my dad did get me transistors to build my science fair projects out of. That was helpful, but we did it all on our own. We'd go out and meet and just talk wild ideas like, when you grow up and you're an engineer, you go out with a company like Apple. You'll go out to lunch with a bunch of people, start talking about, you could do that, and wild ideas, especially when you're young, you come up with ideas that are impossible. And one of the guys in the group sometimes thinks, maybe somebody could do that. And very often, sometimes later on in life or whenever, they actually go out and just try to start seeing if they can do it and accomplish that sort of thing.
Was it like
and
a
we
puzzle
did a lot of that.
to you?
What?
Were things like that like puzzles to you?
Everything that was like a puzzle or like patterns, like mathematics, appealed to me very greatly. And my few little tech friends on the neighborhood, about half the kids in our neighborhood, had engineers for parents. They had little bottles of parts in the garage. And we grew up thinking, yeah, you can build something to solve all these problems. Devices can do it all. You can get a walkie-talkie and talk to somebody across on the next, out of sight.
How do you think your parents encouraged you during those times when you would run in with your newest gadget to your dad who was an engineer? Dad, look what I made.
Didn't have a lot of gadgets. I had a lot of successes in school. My parents were obviously happy about that. I had When I built gadgets, when I did something on my own like that, they pretty much just looked at it and admired it, didn't comment on it a lot. I mean, we'd have, like I described, those house-to-house intercoms, and in 6th grade, I was a ham radio operator, soldered together all the tubes and the capacitors and the tuning dials, and built it up and studied all the stuff, got a license. And I think they were proud of me, but they didn't really show it. They weren't kind of trying to direct me, you should go a certain way.
So they weren't
helicopter. Let you find your thing in life, and we'll help you get there. It was that kind of parent, so I try to be that way.
Right, weren't helicopter parents hovering over you all the time.
They weren't saying you got to learn these subjects, you've got to do this, you got to plan to go to this kind of college. No, it was pretty much what you feel in your heart, and what's your passion. And it's strange, my main passion came about in elementary school, still Children's Discovery Museum age, and I discovered a journal in the hallway. You couldn't find a book in a computer store back then about computers. Computers were further out than rocket science is today. They were in strange places called research. So I opened up this manual and it started describing ones and zeros and how they can be added like our numbers and how to build little devices that make decisions and can even add, and other pictures, how the TV screen can actually store a memory. And wow, I got so intrigued. I read it on my own. Nobody else with me, not my father. I discovered it by accident. And I said, these computer things are wonderful. A 5th grader can understand every single thing of the mathematics of a computer. And I said, my God, you have to be 16 just to drive a car. But you can and these computers are so out there, but there's nothing in the math that needs higher level math. A 5th grader can do it. I thought, this is going to be my love of my life, just playing games on paper. I could never think of buying a single part for a computer or even doing it as a job. Once I became an engineer, I'd be building TVs and radios like engineers did, not computers.
But you did build a computer in the 6th grade, your tic-tac-toe computer.
That's right. Yes, I didn't think it would be a job. In the 6th grade, tic-tac-toe is a rule of a set. You can play every game of tic-tac-toe and write down a set of rules. If there's an X here and an O's here and X here, here's where my move goes. You can be perfect, so you'll never be beaten at tic-tac-toe. And every one of those rules translates into a statement like, if there's an X in square 1 and an X in square 3 and no X in square 2, take square 2 and get your tic-tac-toe. It's a one statement, it's this and this and this. Or it might be this and this or this and this. Well, every time you say and or, it winds up, my dad taught me how that's a circuit, a little transistor. And some other parts called diodes. The little transistor can make a decision that two things have to both be true for the output, and that's called an and. Both, it has to be Tuesday and it has to be an odd day of the month, then this is true. So it was every little rule that you made. So I made tons and tons of transistors, one for each rule of tic-tac-toe, pounded nails into a piece of plywood. My dad, because he was working at Lockheed, had connections with the chip companies, and they donated the transistors as cosmetic rejects. I hope they were. And pound them in. I'd solder all these little parts together and rule after rule after rule after rule. Yeah, it was a huge project. What did I get out of it? Not that I learned how to build a tic-tac-toe playing computer, but that I learned how to do a long, long project that was 100 hours of work and get it done all the way. It's not done till it's done to the completion. And that's an important step in life that I look at other young people. I look back now and I think, how did I do these incredibly huge, long projects? I did one like that in 8th grade that were so long, gave me this discipline. This is what it takes to get a complete product built that actually works and does something for a human.
But yet, this was something you just did for yourself. This was not a homework assignment.
Oh, that was science fair.
It was.
I came up with it, science fair project. Once I bought into it, it was more like a school assignment. I mean, then I had to sort of finish it.
Did you win?
I won, yeah. I won lots of science fairs.
So?
Well, I had, as a matter of fact, in 8th grade, I had the one that won the Bay Area Science Fair. I won the electronics award, and I was competing up to 12th graders. So I won, and so I was one of those real advanced electronics guys.
You think?
Yeah.
So where did the tic-tac-toe computer take you next?
Well, it took me, I didn't realize I was on exactly the path. You go talk about cognitive development, and you can't understand certain concepts until you understand other ones. It's like an object disappears behind a pole and the child doesn't know it's there, but at a later age they do. And there's I went up step by step by step on exactly a perfect path to learning every single thing about designing computers. I didn't know I was on exactly the right path, from my ham radio, learning how little electrons flowed through devices, to using those transistors, like I said, to make decisions, to learning how to combine transistors into things that could add numbers, and then finding out what a real computer was. I was on a course. I wanted to find out what is a computer, and I was too shy to go look for books or ask people. I was just going to encounter what I could accidentally. So extremely self-taught. And I think that, when you're self-taught, your motivation is perfect. You're doing it because you want it. You have it. You wouldn't have to. You wouldn't learn it if you didn't want to. Nobody's making you. It's not, it's not an assignment.
What's it like in your head?
I think my head's more a jumble of all the post-Apple fame and being asked questions all the time like this. But I will tell you, people often come up and say that I'm a genius, and I know that I'm a genius at one thing, which is convincing people I'm a genius, making them think I am.
I think there was a test or two you took that probably confirmed it. But really, I mean, when an idea comes to you, whether you're 10 years old or you're 50 years old, how is the process in your head? How does it work out in your head? How do you then take it to paper? How does it come out?
I don't know. It's a lot different now than it was then. And I used to, back when I grew up, I would go to sleep at night, often with puzzles, math puzzle or a problem from school or a circuit or a program I was working on, something in my head. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and have a solution. And it was just all the time. So I must have been dreaming it. And then I'd take that to school the next day, or it would work out usually. And then one time I woke up in the middle of the night with a solution, and then in the morning I forgot what it was. So I started writing them down. Mm-hmm. And I found out that sometimes you write down very strange things out of your dreams. There are things you already thought about and discarded because it doesn't work. And some of them are really good ones. So I don't know, you just have an idea. Why do you want to do something? Mm-hmm. To me, it was almost all the time that I was putting this kind of effort in. It was little things that had no really grade attached. They were just puzzles. I wanted to do something better than someone else. If it was computer stuff, computer program, I'm trying to think of a way, how can I get a computer program instead of 100 lines of programs? I want to get it down to maybe 15. The absolute perfect. Is there a way? And you have to force your head to try to find a way that nobody teaches you in school, that isn't like normal. It doesn't come to you the first time. And so I was like that. So I was very into that excellence, trying to be better than I ever could before. But I wasn't competing with anyone.
Right, you were competitive with yourself.
All my computer designs in high school were on paper, because I could never afford a part. And then is my next design better? Better to me meant fewer parts. I always thought the only game I could think up was if I could design it but use fewer parts, then I've done something better. I don't know why I thought that, but it turned out to be the real key to, what got me to where I am.
You talk about it just seems like you were in this world and in your head a lot. Were there any outward things? Did you play normal?
Well, sometimes we got parts to build little things. Uh-huh. Buzzer toys and little weird things. And I usually tried to put an element of fun. If I was playing a prank at school, making a high-pitched sound that people couldn't hear, then it was the fun made it have more value than anything else.
Did you get in trouble a lot?
But actually being able to physically touch it with your hand to build something that works, those were unbelievable, memorable experiences. It's more than, I was not the theoretical type that just likes to read it in the book. Read it and drool, look at this thing they make, look at this. But whenever I built something, wow, that was where my head really developed.
So when you were doing this at school, what was the response from your teachers?
I was always recognized as the top math science kid in the school.
Did they get you? Did they understand?
Some teachers got me and some didn't. Oh, I get me. I know you. Avatars.
Yeah, I have one too.
I know that the dean in high school had a list of all these pranks that had been played, and he knew I did them, but he couldn't prove it. He got me, I guess. But no, actually, some teachers thought, it's really funny. But I look at a lot of the people I know that are very, very creative, and they tend to explore different things than customary, almost counterculture. And they tend to have a little bit of misbehavior in their background. Not deliberate, hurtful type stuff, but little exploring the arts of what can be done and what can't. And boy, nowadays we've made strict laws that can just put you in prison for years, just for doing something a kid would do naturally, shine a laser at an airplane. Mm-hmm. And the trouble is, there's no evil intent. I used to think if you go out and do something with an evil intent, you run a stop sign deliberately saying, I'm just going to run it and plow through, well, that's that's different than you accidentally missed one.
Okay, aside from the dangerous things that creativity can inspire, do you worry or wonder that our culture has become so rules oriented and the play is not as free and it might
Yes, I do.
hinder the next genius?
Yes, I do. I cared very much about, obviously, the arts and growing up experiences. Things like children's discovery museums are not so much the left brain stuff, the analytical stuff. And I started the San Jose as the key starter of the San Jose Ballet, now it's called, but it was Cleveland San Jose Ballet. And it's very important to me, these sort of things, these left brain arts. What was the question? I got to get back.
My question is, in our society today compared to when you were growing up, we now have all these rules for kids.
Okay, the structure, yes, you pull out a computer type product and all of you have things, whether it's phone or your computer, and you go to this menu and that menu, and there's a set of steps to do a certain function. And I hate that. And one time Apple made a device called the Newton Message Pad, and you could handwrite on it. Handwriting is human. It's the natural thing we know how to do already. And you would handwrite. I would handwrite Sarah, dentist, Tuesday, 2 p.m. First day I got my Newton. And I clicked a little button called Assist. And somehow it opened up the calendar program and filled in all the data. It knew that I was talking about a calendar entry. And I thought, that's the way my brain thinks. The way I would speak something is so common. It comes to me, and I can do it on this device. And if I wanted to phone a friend, I would sometimes write, call JV, Jim Valentine, and it would go beep, 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 beep into the phone for me. And I preferred to do that rather than thinking out the steps of dialing it myself. And so a lot of these things, I just like being able to speak the way I think. To get here, I just picked up one of my devices, and I have a lot of navigation systems. You have to punch in, I'm going to go to here, I'm going to choose this mode, I'm going to type in on a keyboard the Ritz-Carlton. I just said, navigate to Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco. Did it all.
Wow.
And then it gave me directions on the way, speaking to me and everything. It was so simple. And it's in a phone. It's in a phone right now.
Can we all get that?
It's not an Apple phone. You can get it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have an Apple phone either. But
also when I send my messages now, that phone lets me, it has dictation built in. Short message, hey, I'm busy right now, call me at 4, period. And it takes your dictation.
It'll call you at 4.
Yeah.
Soon. Look for that at the store. But for kids nowadays, many people in the room are teachers, many of us have children, and we are all busy, and so our kids are all busy. And busy, by that I mean we organize them. You have to be here at 3 o'clock, here at 5, on Saturday you're going to do X. There's not that free-ranging play like
I don't recall that bothering me as a kid, though. No, I had some schedules in Little League, and you have to do some things on time. I had a lot of free time, too. It's a mixture. Now, when I'm in college, you'll have all your classes given to you the first couple of years, and you have very little free room to do something you really want to do and enjoy. So that's closer to what you're describing. Mm-hmm. And some kids maybe do get scheduled that tightly, but look at the teachers. Teachers have to do these pages in the book today, and next they can't go back. If the kids don't understand it that day, that's the saddest thing in a teacher's life. To go home, they didn't get it. They just weren't in. Maybe it was a bad day for them. Maybe they had other things on their mind or some play that was fun, something coming up. And some days they get it and the teacher's happy. But if the teacher can't come back the next day and make up for lost time, they have to go to the next pages in the book. There's certain pages you have to do on a day by day schedule, and you can't get behind. And I think that hurts a lot. I was a volunteer teacher, and I could go back and reteach something a different way if it didn't work, and reinforce it. And more like one-on-one, one student on one teacher. You're never going to fail. You're not going to fail whatever their interest is. It might be math for one or history for another. It might be drawing shapes or being an artist for a third. But you're not going to fail if you're one-on-one because you're always going to be in touch with what that child needs. Well,
unfortunately, we don't have many schools like that are one-on-one. And so we have to make do with what we do have.
But it works better if you're 1-on-6. Works better if I got up to where I could know every head in my class 1-on-17. But when you gave me 30, they could hide out, not pay attention when I hit someone with questions and they wouldn't know, and they wouldn't have been paying attention. So, smaller class size I think is very, very important for our schools. And, so why was California, when I was teaching, why was it 50th in the nation, I started asking that question. Mississippi was 49th. We were way out in 50th for class size. And I thought, oh yeah, Proposition 13. But then we had these tax override elections. Some people in a certain city might want their schools to be better. And I would think a lot of them are in, from what I've seen the last couple of days, a lot of attention towards schools and raising money. It's very important here. But you can have an election. And we had an election in Cupertino, and I actually sponsored. I paid for the mailing to everybody, and we got 64% of the vote, and we failed. Because Proposition 13 said we needed 2/3 of the vote, and only 1/3 of the families have kids in school and want to put more money into schools. The other people want to preserve their money. I sponsored the mailing the next year for Cupertino, and that lost, and then I did it for Los Gatos, and it passed. And then Cupertino passed. But then once you pass it, you're afraid to ever lift up the amount.
Right.
But the people in those cities really care. Some cities really care about higher level education. It's very hard to do, and it got me thinking. Money, schools are supposed to be a right, a privilege, but they're really not. It's really an obligation. If you don't go to school, somebody's going to jail. But let's say it's a right. Once it's a right, the government has to provide it. And the government slices up its money to give to all these different things, distribute its money into sections of the pie, slices of the pie. And the slices are proportionate to votes. But a family of 5 gets no more votes than a family of 2. So schools, kids get left out. It's like taxation without representation. They don't get counted in what's going to benefit them, school money. You bet the elderly get counted in voting for elderly issues and candidates, and the farmers get to vote for farm issues.
Well, I read that you weren't very political. Clearly, you were misrepresented in this article.
Well, I'm outside. I'm outside the politics that whole process. I'm not political.
Well, I want to take you back to your development and how it works in your head. You like to challenge yourself. You're very competitive with yourself. What happens when you hit a problem, when you hit a wall? Where do you go from there?
I'm going to go back to when I was young. Oddly enough, I almost never hit a wall. When I set out thinking I could possibly do something, and I thought some part of it is impossible. That's right. I'll describe one, but this is still in later life, young 20s. And I worked and I worked and I worked, but then I got to this one part of the problem. I don't think I'm going to solve this other part. And if I don't solve it, the data nobody's going to know where the bytes start and stop. And then you can't make any sense out of them. And then I came up with another weird idea. The idea came. Luckily, it either comes to you or it doesn't sometimes, to solve these things, like putting color into computers. That was probably one of the biggest things Apple ever did. Nobody expected color to come into a computer because color machines cost $1,000 to generate color. They had tons of chips, and I figured out a way to do it with one little $1 chip. And it was really strange how it happened. But this would apply to young children. I was without sleep for 4 days and nights because Steve Jobs and I got a project to design a game for Atari called Breakout. He said Steve needed the money quick, so we had to do it in 4 days and nights. I didn't think it was possible. Back then, games weren't software; they were hardware, little chips and voltages to wires from here to there make it work. And I didn't think it was possible, but I said I'll try it. And I designed the whole thing, and we got it done in 4 days and nights. But when you're without sleep, when you're going to sleep, your head goes briefly into this period of really creativity, kind of thinking. It's not restricted to the normal thoughts of life and the day. When you're waking up, your head's a little like that. Well, my head was kind of in this floating, half-asleep state, and out on the Atari floor, they only had black and white TVs in those days for the first arcade games. They had this dot going across the screen. It's changing colors like a rainbow, and it was hypnotizing like you're at a concert or something. And they just put little strips of Mylar, red, green, blue, yellow, on the TV screen to do it. But I started thinking, it's so beautiful, and I remember exactly what bench I was at. Steve was wiring up the board over there, and I'm right at this one bench. I just sort of drifted, and I thought, signals for color TVs, I remember from high school electronics, they go up and down at a certain speed. And then I thought, what if you made a signal that went up and down at a different rate? Would it look like color? Just a digital, the normal simple thing I can do with almost no parts at all. Would it look like color? And then, oh my gosh, I figured out a way that I could have four little 0-1 bits circling around, and it could go up and down at different time, and red would become blue. I could put in a different pattern of ones and zeros. I had 16 patterns, and it could become a different shade. It might be a little lighter, and it might be a little darker. Would it work? And didn't know. But when I finally wired it up about a year later and brought Steve over, we saw it, and that was eureka. We knew this was a big change in the world. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you're not sure if it's going to work, because it didn't follow all the methodology, all of the science that's in the books, all those numbers, yet it's similar enough it might work. And in this case, it did.
So is it fair to say that when you face a challenge and you seem to be stuck, that you just continue to plow through without mental rest on the issue? Or do you
Yes,
give
I would
it-
say
you
less
put it
now.
away?
I don't know if that applies as much today. I'm kind of free with my time. I don't have projects of that type, the engineering type, very often today. I know when something's done, having the patience to put a lot of time in it, that also came in handy, because I had that for all my electronics projects from elementary school on, to put in all the time it takes. But that helped when you had kids, to give them to sit down and be able to explain things slowly and not care that they don't have to get it right away. The child can't understand it. You have to be very, very given in that sense.
Do you ever experience a point of frustration then, or are you pretty patient about the process of figuring things out?
I'm very patient about almost everything in life, and I don't get upset and keyed off at anything, except computers that don't work right. Anything.
You're just like us.
Anything that the system doesn't work right. Well, right now I'm trying to get through a horrible bureaucracy in the system. I've been trying for 3 months. I have such limited daytime hours free that I usually am available to do it at 1 a.m. I'm trying to get through it. Toyota has this accelerator problem. We've all heard about it. And they've had recalls. They stopped their sales. Well, I have many models of Priuses that got recalled, but I have a new model that didn't get recalled. This new model has an accelerator that goes wild, but only under a certain condition of cruise control, when it's safe. And I can repeat it over and over and over safely. And I can't get any one Toyota dealer or the National Highway Transportation Safety Advisory.
You mean you figure this out?
No, they could look at my car and figure out it's in the software. It's not a bad accelerator pedal. I can do it in cruise control with no foot on an accelerator, and I can cause it to happen. And the car takes off, and it can be very scary, but luckily for me, I can hit the brake, and it solves it. But they might have a bad software that's causing the other problems. I don't know a way to get heard. I don't know a way to get through the government safety people that really just want to contain a database of how many people had a problem rather than actually solving it.
Well, if we just had a camera here, we could put you on the news and,
Well, that would help.
I don't know.
Yeah, that would help. Because I did get it in writing to Toyota dealers a couple months ago even, and someday I'm sure it'll be in court.
I have a feeling after this moment, something's going to happen to change that problem.
Well, I
Somebody's
actually
on
hope
their
so.
phone right now, their iPhone, calling Toyota.
I was even talking to National Highway all the way driving up
Wow.
here, still trying to get through, because this was a rare time. I let Julie drive, so I had like an hour free
Maybe
with
we
my
can work
VIN
on
number
that.
in front of me.
Maybe
Yeah.
someone here can work on that while we're talking. Let me ask you, back to the technology and access that children have nowadays. Is it good for them to sit at home and do this for 4 hours every night or is it good for, my daughter does this, she's on her computer doing her homework, she's talking to a friend, she's got another thing open, and she's got 5 things going on, and yet she's a very good student, but I don't know how that works. But what as a parent, when should we say, I need you to back off that, or have at it with all the technology?
It's of course, it's been said since the start of computers. Oh my gosh, this is terrible computer. Children are spending their time on this machine instead of with other people. And I saw it in my own first son. He was gifted, but he's always in his room, always on his computer. And I thought, well, gosh, I offered him to go and read the newspaper. He wants these articles, but he never wanted to. And then all of a sudden, he was knowing more about what was going on in the world than I was. And I just didn't know how that was happening. I didn't switch from newspapers that quickly. And I was very shy to meeting people. Now I realize these kids can be shy, go in their room with a computer, and they've got whole social networking connections of people that are even like them, even though they're at school, nobody wants to talk to them. So I think for shy people, it's like a benefit. And I don't know how the positives and the negatives all weigh out psychologically over time. It's clear that using the computer is important, probably the most important academic tool of our life, from early age on, all through college, probably in our work and our productivity. So it's probably good to have a lot of quick knowledge about computers, be very familiar and hands intimate with it. Yeah.
Well, you've probably heard this before. You worked at Hewlett-Packard. You worked on the early calculators, the scientific calculators. And then people, when they became popular, people said, oh, no one's going to know math anymore. No one's going to be able to work out a math problem. And I'm wondering if the concern is the same with computers. Once we stop going to libraries and we find everything on a Google search. And
it's, there's a problem with education, which is we're going to teach math and we're going to teach the ways to develop these calculators. But sometimes we teach it so poorly, we just give people, here's a formula to solve a certain kind of problem. But, didn't let them and lead them through the methodology in their head of, here's a description of the problem, how would you do this? And lead them into developing the formula themselves. If you have the really brightest kids, they come out, they could write the book, but we're just giving the book already written for them. And that's very much like, well, you have a calculator to do the math for you. And I think it's one of those things that for some people it's important to know the math. Our society is going to work fine. If a few people know the structure of math so well that they can, do the next physics calculations and discover more about our world and bring us something more, finally solve energy problems and that sort of thing, it's going to come from knowing math. But we don't need 100% of the people to be that level of expert for society to work. A lot of different people can go in different directions that, and some will naturally get interested in one thing or another. Like I would have been interested in math even if it was scorned in school.
We talk about these products enhancing academic life, but what about the creative life? For kids who sit in front of a TV all day long and play games, and where does that enhance their creative side?
Well, I think you'd want to talk to people like musicians and, that are artists when they grow up, and pretty much their life went in that direction from a very early phase. They knew that they were attracted to this media. I had in my own classes of very young elementary school kids, I had, for example, one guy that was just better than all the others at the painting programs, getting very special effects with shading. He now is a great photographer and a designer on computer stuff and has his own studios and a lot of big sales and turned out to be, incredible artist. So I think it's in you at an early stage. It's in your soul, even though there were no classes on it necessarily in school. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily, there were no classes on computers in my school. There were no computers, but I was going to do it anyway. It's what, you have this little seed that sort of takes you in a certain direction. I think when you get misguided is if you listen to too many people that say, no, here's where you should be. Here's the college you should go to maybe. Parents do that a lot and educators do that a lot. And, I was lucky. My parents didn't put that pressure on me. They let me follow my heart.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the accident factor. When you stumble upon something?
I never thought about it when I was young, but every time I stumbled on something, oh my gosh, look what I've discovered, this and that. And I tried to tell it to some friends and nobody wanted to be interested in that stuff. It was high to computers and all that. No, we just want to, go down and play some football today. So I stumbled on it, but I was lucky, a lot of lucky accidents. Also though, is when you have no money. And sometimes you try to make something. You have no money. You look for the ways to do it for very cheaply, very free. Might use materials at home, clay or whatever, but whatever you can get cheaply. And I think that's beneficial. Mm-hmm. I think that's good. It forces you to think deeper and deeper. How do I do it? How do I do it? I can't afford a certain normal way it's done. That's the way you think of the new way, and newness is creativity.
But have any of your great inventions, and there have been so many, have they come primarily from a surprise, an accident? Or is it
well, I just described one surprise that led to color, which was one of the great advances of the
hallucinogenic.
Apple II. We actually at that time, oh my gosh, we're going to have color things on the screen when there weren't even color arcades in the arcades yet. And we did it cheaply. Yeah, we knew we had a huge winner, Steve and I. That's when we really said, oh my gosh, we're going to have a company. Something significant. Other accidents. Very often, my style, I was lucky. I wasn't given a job that I have to write down a 40-page definition of every little step I'm going to do, and here it is, get it approved so that the money will come. I was, thank God, before that, so I was just free on my own. I was doing all the different steps, the different disciplines to making things, so that let me not have to go to other people. It was like not a committee. It was just one person. And as I designed something, oh my gosh, if I made this little chip do this other thing, I'll not only have color, I'll have graphics for almost no parts. And then I said, oh my gosh, if I do it this way, line by line, I will have pixels for things like photos. And those were accidents. I didn't know in advance what I was going to wind up with. I was going to start with the parts at the low end and build these parts up to define my computer. And wherever those parts took me, I would go. Some people now in the company try to define the computer at the top, and then we'll go hire people to design each of the parts of it because we already know how it's done. But that way you can't really do the new things easily. It's very difficult to stumble on them. I mean, a company like Apple can, but it's a heavy, heavy tradition, and it's very unusual.
All right. We are going to let the audience ask you some questions.
Okay.
And we have about 15 minutes left. And I'm sure there'll be a microphone.
Let me say, afterwards there's a book signing. I'll stay as long as needed.
Oh, good. Wow. We love that.
Talk to people.
While we're waiting for the mics to come out, what's exciting you now? What is in your head? What are you working on?
Well, a lot of my life is always interested in the latest gadgets. And I'm also excited about my company, Fusion.io. We're taking the little camera type chips and making devices that plug in and make all the big important computers of the world, the ones that serve everything you do on the internet, make them faster so that we won't have to wait as long as users, you know. And you'd be surprised. You walk into companies and they have 10,000 computers that they call servers serving this stuff. You walk into another company, they have 60,000. Another company has 25,000, and they all are going to be using this technology. So I'm at a company, Fusion.io, out of Salt Lake City.
Faster.
Doing that, yeah, it's a revolution.
Fast enough.
It makes them faster, lower power. You take a little board of ours you can hold in your hand, and you can replace 6 big racks,
wow.
$100,000 worth of the normal hard disks and stuff. We're getting rid of hard disks,
right?
Which is sad to me because I'm from San Jose. The first hard disk was designed and invented in San Jose, California.
See, now look what you're doing. You're putting people out of business. No, I'm kidding. Do we have any questions? The lady, and if you'd stand, please. Do we have microphones?
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, here we go.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thanks. This is scary, but a lot of us here at this table, we are wondering what your thoughts are about all the screen time that so many of our kids are now having. As they get older, at least my kids are getting more proficient at the iPhone games and at the Wii. And it's hard to know. I mean, I grew up with Coleco football, and that was really great, and we figured out how to get done in like 1 second. But what is your thought? Is this screen time of video games, is there really a value to this, or is this not? I try to keep it for my kids.
Well, of course. I grew up in an era where we didn't have those things, and really, the newspaper on paper seemed better, and paper books in some ways seem better. It's hard for me to move into it. And then I see the number of hours. When I taught classes, I called them the computer kids. They're just always on their computer for everything they could. They adapted to it so quickly, and we didn't change as rapidly. But I think it's like a steamroller. It's such a huge, huge phenomenon with everyone doing it everywhere. You can't stop it. It's kind of one of those things we have to, accept. And this is the future is going to be different than the past. And I myself got caught up when the internet came, just to be aware of all the news going on, plus my email. I mean, I might be hung up on the computer 8 hours a day, just myself, just trying to do my contact, because where did paper mail go?
Do you ever get overwhelmed?
What?
Do you ever get overwhelmed?
Oh yeah, every day of my life. Yeah, it's a bane. Someday I'm going to get sick. And I'm going to have to give it up for a few weeks, and that'll be the most pleasant. I'll be talking about that for the rest of my life, how pleasant it was. But real people are very important. I think that you always got to keep some mix. It's surprising now, company, go out and hire a group of engineers without ever meeting them in some other country. Define the jobs, and the jobs get done, so it does seem a little strange to us.
We're losing an aspect of life in some way.
Yeah.
Of interaction. Of learning.
But I can't give a solution. I don't particularly like it, but only because of where I came from. I like the natural way, but for some people it's a benefit. Some people actually have many more communication options open than they had before.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Microphone. Okay.
I'll repeat.
You go, girl.
This is really hard.
I'm already sold on using technology with kids. And I've got kids emailing and blogging and things like that. And every year I have one or two people, no, not you, one or two people, this is mom of a kid in my class, but one or two people who say to me, I'm not sure that my kid is old enough or they're ready to be doing this now. And I would like you to give me something to say to them so I can say, this is what Stephen Wozniak says. And then they can't argue with me.
Sure. Well, as I sort of mentioned, it's going to be the most important academic tool of their life. These are the ways of the future. It's better, sometimes if you pass it up while you're young or get told not to, you aren't as capable as others when you get into the real, even competitive work world. And all I can say is, and besides which, they all see their friends using this stuff, and it looks fun. The funny thing is, computers, thank God, and I'm glad I had a part in this, are not only the work tools, but they're fun. They're actually fun in a lot of cases, in most cases.
So maybe like an enhancement.
So, and that, and it's less important what you teach, in my opinion, than that you make it fun, you make it motivating, so the kids want to learn. If they want to do it, they're going to learn a lot more than your words equate to even.
Great, I'm going to write that down and I will tell people that now.
You can also go to Steve's webpage. He has lesson plans and all sorts of things for kids. Because you're very involved in the school districts and you provide
my whole life, when I was in
hardware,
sixth grade, I told my dad I'm going to be a fifth grade teacher someday. I would want to. That was my second choice to engineering. And I went and did it. Every college, I always paid attention to every time we had a psychology class or something and subjects came up about the child mind and its development, what was important. Didn't have children of my own, but I just always wanted to I'll be close to education, young people and their learning, get through life.
Hi.
So, glad to.
This is a teacher question. I was also a teacher a long time ago. How did you motivate your fifth graders? With your problem-solving mind, like how did you get 30 kids to get excited about math or whatever subject you were teaching?
Okay. In one example, if it was something like math or like programming, I wouldn't have them program things that calculate and sort a table of numbers. I would do things that had little squares of color that could move around on a board. I'd program them how to make their own little animations, things that you can see and touch. It's more that hands-on feeling. That was one of the techniques I used, but pretty much I tried to build in an element of fun into every single thing we did on the computers. Work a while and then put a fun little program on your desktop, or work a while and learn a little trick program and then send some data to another person's computer, but then learn how to send something that makes a dinosaur cross their screen. I just loved, so the kids, their smiles just kept them, so excited about the class. It was like the best class of their life. I'm sure they'd almost all say that.
Modest.
And it was voluntary. Well, they do. They come back to me, but no, we all had a lot of fun. So I got to share in the fun too.
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
The pranks that you talked about in your book were hilarious. Can you share one of your more recent pranks?
More recent pranks? I do a lot of pranks, but I haven't written my prank book yet. You've hardly read any of my pranks. That book is going to shock the world. Okay, the other night, a couple nights ago, I got a phone call while I was driving my car, and it was the wrong number. The lady says, well, the first rule of improv comedy is always say yes. So I just acted like I was the person. Just, where Charles is? No, I don't know where he is. Well, do you know what he's wearing? I said, well, I heard what he's wearing, but I don't know if I believe it. Because why would somebody wear a swimsuit in the winter? She says, he's wearing a swimsuit. She wound up telling me the whole story about how he was just out on probation. He was going to go to Walmart and get a track phone.
Great.
But I hope she found him.
And I hope he doesn't find you. Yes,
He'll love me.
Hi. The thing I'm really curious about, I'm an educator also. Thank you. It's the breadth versus depth. We're fighting this total immersion in technology, this nonstop information flow that's at us. It becomes really addictive, and we get very stimulated and turned on by the nonstop back and forth. But I'm wondering where the mental space comes to actually do thinking in depth. And don't we have to discipline ourselves to sort of step out of the immersion in the information flow to do the real creative thinking?
Yeah, I not only worry about the breadth, but it might be to our age, but it bothers me. It's it keeps me from ever being able to get very far towards the depths, to really studying something I'm interested in, following it up, because there's so many things coming from so many angles hitting us that are all so valuable and interesting. And but then again, we always had a magazine store full of magazines. Did we buy every one of them? No. So we sort of, in your own life, I guess you filter down to what you can take and leave yourself some free time to go deep. The kids, we don't understand them very much. It's just like our own parents said about us. And they're all over the map. What they're doing here, they know about this new program, this new website, and this and that. The word just passes so much below our level of consciousness that it seems like they're very, very broad. But then they're younger. When I was younger, I could do a lot more with my mind and my working than I can now, It's like the world's set up to handle us older folks, though. we have our place in society.
There's a program for that.
But yeah, I think that when things are new, let's say that Moore's law makes the chip smaller, has led to all this computer revolution we have, and it allows us to have newer and better and smaller and different products every year. We're in one of the fastest changing lives it must be ever in history, for the cost of these kind of products to change 1 billion times in my lifetime, maybe 1 trillion in my lifetime. Cheaper, nothing ever goes down in price that much. So we've changed how everything in our life works. And I don't know, but someday maybe things will stop changing as much. And we'll have more static, like the cars will be more similar year to year to year. And I think at that point in time, that's when there'll be a lot less of this push to keep up with the newest thing. Maybe it'll decline a little bit. Of course, software makes there could always be a new social website. So it's hard to say it with any real conviction. But I think people will always find, you've got to have some path for some in-depth thinking. I'm thinking what you're really interested in, want to learn about.
So you're saying you kind of go to your own level.
Yeah. It's in the person. I think the way the first 3 years of school, I wish instead of teaching things, we only worked on psychologically working with the children to enjoy whatever their thing in life is. And if they enjoy that educational aspect, by the time they hit 3rd grade, then they're going to want to learn. They're going to want to learn. You can't stop a kid who wants to learn.
They could go to the Bay Area Discovery Museum.
Maybe to follow on, if you had one of those snow globes and you were thinking about teaching and learning and play in the future, what would you see once that snow settled?
Wow. I'm not sure I understand the question, so I better not.
Well, you've clearly had a hand in the future of teaching and learning, and you clearly have enormous joy.
Yes, I've answered that question a lot of times, and I see that in my area, the computers are going to be primary element in schools. It would still be pretty much keyboard and screen. Now we're getting away from keyboards, so who knows how true that is. But I would like to see this. One thing is, I talked about class size. Well, I thought at one point in my life, what if you lined up 30 computers with 30 students, and each computer could be like a teacher? And they aren't, because we haven't really gone diddly squat in artificial intelligence. Don't believe that a computer can act like a real human being who looks at your face, who knows what you're thinking, who can guess what you did last night or how tired you are, ask about your brother and if his play went okay. So the computer can't do that yet. But let's say it gets closer and closer to a human. It attracts the young children to a human-type friend. And eventually, right now you go to school and your presentation from the teacher is fixed. The material comes to you almost the same way to every student. And then you take a test and determine some students do well and some do poorly. Of course, if you're already poorly, you don't study as hard anyway, so you don't care and you do poorly for then on after. But the grade is a variable. The presentation is fixed, the grade's a variable. Well, what if we reverse that and said you get to stay with all your friends, the same age, forever, in the same class, but the computer might take you, the computer will decide what your grade is fixed. Your grade is going to be an A. Everybody's going to get an A. They're going to understand the subject thoroughly, but it's going to teach, some people will go fast in math and some will go slow in math. Some will like to read a lot and some won't. And the computer will take them up until they've passed that grade level. So everybody in the class is at different levels learning different things at the same minute. They're all being presented different things, but it's enough like a human that they're all happy and satisfied. And then we have the grade is fixed and the presentation, the order and the time it takes for anyone is the variable. So that's one possible future. That would be a hopeful future, but there's an awful lot to achieve it.
Joe?
How is the touch screen going to change how adults and children work with computers? One of the things that I always respected a lot about Apple coming out around the time of the Macintosh, I call it the Macintosh dreams, was that you can make a computer that can do a job, or you can put a lot of effort into the computer and make it do it in the natural human way. And when you do it, when you put the effort in to make it work the human way, you have effectively said that the human is the master and the computer's the slave. When all of a sudden we're modifying our behavior, our ways, to try to figure out the technology, we've now said the technology is the master and we're the slave. Sort of. We're finding our way in it. So this touchscreen, natural gestures are something we all do. Speaking, of course, is the best of all. You know, like the example I gave of speaking to my phone, it's just like natural and it's so human. And I think touchscreens are a part of that evolution. If I want to move something, when we came up with the Macintosh, we came up with the word, actually before the Macintosh, we did the Lisa, but we didn't call the screen a screen, we called it a desktop. Because a desktop is a human metaphor, something we all have and know what a desk is. And we try to come up with a lot of that, you know, make people do things the way they always did. Shape the mouse the way that feels nice as a stone in the creek, as Steve Jobs says. So, you know, the more we can get to just normal human ways of doing things, I think is always better. I'm always for it. Sometimes we slip back and forget the formulas and technology gets complicated. How do you do this? And I got to back out of that and then I got to go into this. Even on phones now, it can be difficult.
You know,
We're going to get time for one final question. Before we take it, I just want to acknowledge there are a lot of teachers in the room today. And you guys are great, and you're never acknowledged the way you should be. Just like to take a second. Will the teachers stand and so we kind of... We'll do one more. Sure.
I guess I should stand. Yes, I always liked teachers as my favorite people, and so it's no surprise I'm married to a person that taught for 12 years, works for education at Apple.
before we take our last question, I've been looking at this contraption on your wrist. It's 3 vials, or a battery, and 2, I don't know, what
Those
is
things
it?
that look like vials are actually old vacuum tubes that run on 140 volts, and it's waterproof, so you can take it in the bathtub, but I wouldn't try it. And when I turn my wrist on this old technology, these tubes are not made anymore. They were probably made about 1970. When I turn my wrist, it displays 1:24, the hours and the minutes. 1:24.
Oh, look at that.
So I turn my wrist to see the time, and it's on. So it's on so seldom it doesn't wear the battery down too fast. And it's like the old and the new. I did not invent it. I wish I had. If I had thought of it, you have to think of it first. But I've met the guy who built them. Handmade in America. Very rare. It's the coolest gadget I've ever had. But I wear it not because it's a gadget or geeky or looks weird. I would rather have a nice thin watch on with hands. But this is the way I like the time. 1:24. It's the way I speak it out of my own mouth. You know, it's so human to me the way this watch works. That's why I stuck with it.
I'm glad I found that out.
Yeah, you can all get them.
Oh, it's a tie back here. Oh, no.
So I have a question. Science, when you go into pure science, companies tend to be stratified, where there's a chemistry-based science, there's a biology-based, and I'm wondering, are you involved or do you see it happening in the near future where technology, and I don't mean devices, I mean more pure science, where technology is going to be working with chemistry, in terms of building medicines, and do you see that? Are you involved in it now, and when do you see that coming?
I'm not involved in that. I've been around some of the people, who got even Nobel Prizes for using technology to basically do, decode the gene, entire genome. Also, yeah, and as far as chemistry and physics, just the raw science of them, everything in our computer life, everything having to do with chips is based on chemistry and physics. And people who understand every little particle in atoms and how they flow and what are the forces involved, and what materials you can implant to make it work differently. It's incredible. A lot of real theoretical science, a lot of the real science is in our electronics. Whereas when I was young, it was just hook up some resistors, capacitors, transistors. You hook up the circuit the right way and it works, the 5th grade stuff. But the people who make the lower level parts, the chips of today, the microprocessors, those involve a lot of science. I don't have any involvement in that regard right now.
Can we give both of our speakers
Thank you so much.
Steve will be signing books in the lobby afterwards. Thank you for coming, everybody. Have a good day.